All right, I have 6 o'clock. I call this meeting to order. Board members in attendance, we have Tracy Stridget, Kim Crockett, and myself, Billy Holland. If y'all would, keep Kyle Glover in your prayers. I think many of you know that had some health concerns, and just, again, keep him in your prayers. If everyone would now stand, I'm going to lead us in the invocation, and we'll follow that with the pledge. God, just be with our schools, be with our nation. Keep our kids safe in the schools, be with our teachers. We ask so much of them. From the instruction they get daily to dealing with all types of situations, our administrators, our central office staff. Our environment is ever-changing. Grant us wisdom tonight in the decisions that we make. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, you have received the agenda for the meeting. May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hall. First item on the agenda tonight is a special recognition. Oftentimes in education, it's hard to thank everybody that does so many different things that makes our jobs easier. But this particular person has been a community strong person as long as I've known him. He's probably ready to say, "Hey man, quit talking." I'm a little embarrassed, but I want to bring Mr. Stacy Mills up. Come on up, Mr. Mills. Mr. Mills, those of you that may not know, I've known him for a long time. Appreciate you coming in tonight. One reason that we live stream our meetings is because Mr. Mills many years ago said, "Look, the public deserves to know what's going on, and we need to put this out there." So Mr. Mills used to come up here, volunteer his time. We would put everything out on Travel Alive. I think it's right, Travel Alive. He volunteered to start the broadcasting classes at Prattville High School that have grown tremendously. You may want to, if you want to touch on the guy that's still working in the news agency, like he's made a lot of big differences with the kids in our community, and he's recently branched off from Prattville Live and has a whole separate channel that they publicize all things at Talga. This is public schools, private schools. So, we often talk about in education, it takes a village, and Mr. Mills, from the depths of my heart, I appreciate you, and from the board members, we want to give you a special present. We just want to tell you thank you for all that you've done and that you continue to do, and I'm very privileged to count you as a friend. We appreciate you. Thanks. Mr. Mills, no speech?
No. I turn the knobs, I don't do the talking.
Well, all kidding aside, I think most of you in the room know Mr. Mills. That's long overdue. We appreciate all that you've ever done, sir, and I appreciate you being able to call you a friend. The second presentation on the agenda, at this time, I would like to ask the Board Chamber, the Area Chamber of Commerce Chairman, Ms. Lisa Miller, to come forward.
Ms. Whitman, will you allow some of the chamber board members and staff to come up with me as well?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
And we're going to come right here? Is that
Fantastic.
Thank you. Superintendent Woodfin and members of the Autauga County Board of Education, I'm Lisa Miller, Chairman of the Board for the Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce. It is with great pleasure that I, along with my fellow board members and chamber staff, come before you to show our commitment to you on the upcoming ad valorem tax referendum, as well as commend you for your efforts in being proactive in shaping the future of Autauga County. As the voice of the business community, the Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce's mission is to strengthen the business environment and our community. The Chamber has the responsibility to promote the economic well-being of our community and to advocate for a positive business environment. Two of our program of work committees are education, workforce development, and economic development. Superintendent Woodfin and several of you serve on those committees, And you know full well the Chamber's desire to support your efforts in developing a well-educated workforce. We know that to our community, our citizens, and most of all, our youth. We want our students to know that we will continue investing in their future because they are our future. It is unacceptable to keep saying to our teachers that they do so much with so little. It is unacceptable to tell our principals, teachers, support personnel, and our students that we're okay right now, but who knows what the future holds for our school system because of the lack of funding. We cannot continue down this path. On November the 5th, the residents of Watauga County can make a game-changing decision by supporting Act 2024-257 that will be included as a constitutional amendment on the general election ballot. At our August Chamber of Commerce Board meeting, our board unanimously approved a resolution of support of the Board of Education's efforts to encourage residents to support this game-changing measure. And if you will allow me to read this, and we would like to present this to you. It reads, Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce Resolution of Support 2024 ad valorem referendum. Whereas the Watauga County Schools and Watauga County Board of Education have demonstrated exceptional skill in maximizing resources to enhance the education of students in Watauga County. And whereas local funding is currently at the state of Alabama's required millage, and whereas the rising cost of education without additional funding have placed our school system at a critical juncture in ensuring the proper education of our students in Watauga County. And whereas the Watauga County Schools and Watauga County Board of Education are currently ranked 128 out of 138 school systems in the state in total funding. And whereas there is a continued expectation to advance our education system. And whereas education is the single most important investment in economic prosperity, leading to growth in business, industry, entrepreneurship, and support for our military. And whereas we strongly support investing in education for our children, our teachers, our workforce, and the future of our community. And whereas the Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce believes in the value and potential of our school system. Now therefore, I, Lisa Miller, Chairman of the Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, do hereby declare on this 9th day of September 2024 that the Prattville Area Chamber of Commerce fully supports the Watauga County Schools and the Watauga County Board of Education in their efforts to pass Constitutional Amendment Act 2024-257. We support a yes vote on November 5th. In witness whereof, I have set my hand as chair of the Chamber of Commerce Board and affixed my signature to this proclamation. We do support your efforts and thank you for allowing us to come to you and present this to you and encourage our residents to support you and to vote yes on November 5th.
Chamber, thank y'all.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, absolutely.
Y'all welcome.
I'll send you everything. I'll send you what I've done. See how. How you doing?
Sir.
Thank you so much.
As a board, we greatly appreciate the support that the Chamber of Commerce has always provided us, and we appreciate that support just in all of these. Next item on the agenda, recently our board members achieved levels in the AASB School Board Member Academy during the 2024 Academy year. This ended on June the 30th. Each board member reached level 2 in the Academy, and we applaud their commitment to school board service demonstrated by their participation. Board members, we're going to repeat it again. I'm going to pull you over to the side, give you your certificate, and snap a quick picture if that's okay. Appreciate you guys. All right, first up, Mr. Holland. Congratulations. There's a lot of fun days on the train. Dr. Stritch, congratulations. All right. Next up, Ms. Crockett. Congratulations. To achieve that level, there's a lot of meetings, a lot of training, a lot of PD that board members have to do. So guys, thank you for what you do for our students. All right, next item on the agenda, a member of the public would like to address the board. So Ms. Culpepper, yes ma'am, you can now address the board. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to address the board and we will start the timer when you begin. But thank you, absolutely, yes ma'am, anything that you have, be glad to pass it out.
And Ms. Culver, I'm gonna keep the time. I'm gonna let you know like 30 seconds. If
I
that's
timed myself, so I should be right around 3 minutes.
We're not going to pound you on it.
Okay, do I?
wherever you go.
Wherever you go best.
Okay, I'll just go here, so I'll tell you
You
all
don't,
this.
and Ms. Culver, you just want me to pass these?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just
Yeah.
one. Good evening, members of the Ottawa County School Board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Melissa Culpepper, and I am here to discuss an important issue regarding our current dress code policy, specifically the rule that mandates girls cannot wear leggings unless their t-shirts are bigger than length. My daughter, an AP honor roll student and student athlete, has already been dress coded twice this year for wearing leggings. I have submitted pictures to you of each violation so that you can look at the First and foremost, I want to recognize the intention behind having a dress code as outlined by the Ottawa County School Board, which states that the dress code is put into place, and I quote, "to establish and maintain a safe and respectful learning environment where students can focus on their education without unnecessary distractions." This is undoubtedly a commendable goal. However, the specific rule concerning leggings and fingertip-length t-shirts, while well-intentioned, falls short of this objective in several significant ways. To begin with, this dress code rule disproportionately affects girls. While the intent is to ensure modesty, it inadvertently places undue scrutiny on girls' clothing choices, fostering a culture of body shaming and objectification. This can lead to self-esteem issues and detract from the focus on academic and personal growth. Sorry, I'm really nervous. Second, leggings have become a standard and practical clothing choice for many people, including adults. They are comfortable, versatile, and appropriate for a school setting. Requiring a long t-shirt that reaches fingertip length is unnecessary and impractical, especially in hot weather or during physical activity. Allowing students to dress comfortably can significantly enhance their concentration on studies rather than on their appearance. Third, overly stringent dress codes can lead to unnecessary classroom interruptions. When a student is penalized for violating the dress code, it not only affects that student's day, but also disrupts that entire class. Focusing on learning rather than policing students' clothing should be our priority. Fourth, fashion evolves and our dress code should evolve as well. What might have been considered inappropriate years ago is now widely accepted. Schools across the country are updating their dress codes to be more inclusive and practical. By modernizing our dress code, Ottawa County can join this movement, encouraging a more inclusive and supportive educational environment for our children. Last, but also important, let's remember that the students are the primary stakeholders here. Implementing a more flexible dress code could and should involve the voices of our children in the decision-making process, showing them that their opinions are valued and well respected. Updating our policies to be fair and inclusive will demonstrate your commitment to their well-being and their educational success. In conclusion, I urge you, the members of the Ottawa County School Board, to reconsider and revise this outdated dress code rule. The goal should be to support students in their educational journeys, promoting a sense of equality, comfort, and confidence. By updating our policies to reflect these values, we can create an environment where all students can genuinely thrive. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Culpepper.
Thank you, Ms. Culpepper. I appreciate it. You're exactly right. You're right on 3 minutes.
All right, a member of the public would like to address the board, so Ms. Detmer. Yes, ma'am. Same thing, you can address the board. As a reminder, you will have 3 minutes to address the board, and you will start your time.
Do you want me to let you know in 30 seconds of?
You can, I don't think I'll be quite 2 minutes.
Okay.
I did time myself as well, but, hi, thank you for allowing me, the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Kate Detmer. I am a parent of, a child, at one of our schools here. My daughter's 9. We are new to the school district. We're new to this state. We have been here for approximately 2 months. We are military. We've had the ability to live in many different areas, which has provided us with a well-rounded and unique lens of which to view the world. A week into this school year, she was dress coded for a tank top. She called me from the office, trying not to cry, and asked me to bring her another shirt. She sat for over an hour in the office, even though she had a jacket to wear. Her teacher told her that because it was hot, she wouldn't wear the jacket all day. When I dug into the situation, what I found was quite appalling for how a 9-year-old should be treated and viewed. Her tank top was within 3 finger widths, as the policy states. She was apparently sent down for her cotton bell bottoms. However, no one informed me differently and allowed her to go back to class with the same pants she wore to school, and they did not cause a distraction. Her teacher also stated to me, as a mother that raised little girls also, we have to remember that there are boys and girls in this building that are 12 and 13. As if to imply that I should label my daughter's body as distracting because of clothes she had on and teach her to dress for other people. When I asked the principal what data the district used to update the policy, he couldn't provide an answer other than people sat down and updated it this year. I've also asked for data on how many of the dress code violations are female and how many are males. I have not received that data. Policies, as you know, should be rooted in data, not by what some adults consider distracting clothing on children. What I'm here to say is that policies are important. I won't argue that a dress code policy of some sort isn't necessary, but I will argue that when you take that policy and adhere it so strictly that you take away instructional time because they're wearing leggings, you're doing your students a disservice. In order for students to get to a point where they can really learn, they need to feel a sense of belonging. They need to feel cared for and loved. When teachers and administrators make it a point every day to tell children, you don't look right, you aren't dressed the right way, kids aren't going to feel loved or supported. And when you create that environment at a school, you tear down their self-esteem, their individual identities, and you foster an environment of shame, anxiety, and limited self-worth. School should be an environment kids want to be in. Instead, the school has made it clear where their priorities lie, and it's not in the well-being and best interest of our kids. To label children, especially girls' bodies, as distracting is to limit their self-worth to their body. One more.
For both parents, I want to thank y'all for coming and addressing the Board of Education and bringing these to us. Thank y'all.
All right, board members, are there any questions related to any of the information in the proceedings information?
Mr. Woodfin, when do we update our dress code? Is it yearly or?
Yes, we review the whole code of conduct every year now. I will say this particular year, we did not make any changes to the dress code as it was before. Now, we did make, 2 years ago, before I was superintendent, we did make several adjustments to the dress code to modernize it then. Before, there was some other rules with leggings that were not even allowed, so there has been an attempt to adjust it some. But again, I echo Mr. Holland, we appreciate you guys coming in and letting us know. And we'll review it again as part of our protocol at the end of the year. All right, if there's no further questions, before my recommendation for approval of the consent agenda, I'd like to give some information on each one of the items. Item number 2 contains all athletic field trips for the month. Item number 3 contains an agreement for temporary employment. Item number 4 seeks board approval to use the capital K-12 grant from last year to pay down our 2015 bond debt that. As you recall, when we were awarded that money last year, it was specific to a certain bond. We had to quote unquote go through some hoops to be able to pay down this bond as well. So everything's good on that. Item number 5 contains a job description for an ARI interventionist position that Prattville Primary has applied for and was awarded a grant to fund it. So this position will not come out of our funding. It's something that Prattville Primary actually earned. Item number 6 contains the 5-year capital plan as mandated by the Alabama State Department of Education. Item number 7 contains supplemental coaching contracts for current employees. This is a slight change from the way we've done this before. This item contains all coaching supplements for you guys to see. That's again trying to be transparent. That's a little different from how we've done it before, but that's every supplement in the county. Are there any questions with the consent agenda as presented? And at this time, I recommend approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. May I get a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand.
At this time, I recommend approval of the personnel report as presented.
Board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. May I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand.
At this time, I would like to ask our CSFO, Ms. Leslie Poe, to come forward to present our budget for the 24-25 school year.
Don't get so excited about it. Good evening. It's that time of year, it goes by fast and quickly, but it's that time of year now to look at our next year budget and where we're, currently at and what it's gonna look like. There are some slides that were available on the table. Everything is posted to our website, so you can get everything that I'm presenting tonight. It's already on the website, so you can go out there and look, if you need to refresh or review or whatever. So it's out there available for public. So the budget process, involves all parties. We talk to principals, directors, we listen to board members, what the super has intentions of moving us forward and what he would like to see and how we are going to, try to move forward with next year's school budget or fiscal year budget. We do have to stay in compliance with the legislature requirements, U.S. Department of Education requirements, advanced ed, and the state legislature and Department of Education. Some of our funding requires local match. That's what the ad valorem covers. Our foundation program requires a match this year of 10 million, slightly over 10 million. That's an increase, and you'll see the increase from last year. There's a formula that the state uses to determine that, based on, the ad val that we collect. They take in all of that and review it to determine that. Our capital purchase, which is state money that we receive for our public school funds area, the public school funds money can be utilized for construction, renovation, or debt. So, how we receive our funding, we receive it based on our ADM, that's the, 20-day head count. You'll hear ADM, let me say this, we did a lot of acronyms in education. ADM is average daily membership. So it's basically your attendance for your school system, and there's a time frame that we have to submit that, and that information determines our funding for the next year. So all of our funding, we had, our ADM was at 8,756.8 students. I don't know how you get 0.8 students, but once again, there's formulas out there for all of that. So that is what determines, our funding for the 25 year, but that was last year's student enrollments. So just keep that in mind, that's last year's numbers. So what is the foundation program? The foundation program is what the state legislature gives to us each year. Every student in the state has that equal, and adequate educational opportunity, and, they are once again determined by ADM. And then it does require a local level support, and that's where our ad valorem tax plays into part with that. The foundation program, provides us with teacher units. It involves instructional support, OCE, which is other current expense. That money is there to assist with your support staff, your maintenance, your behind the scenes kind of crew, not necessarily just teachers, but it can. If you don't have enough, funding with your teacher units, you can use that for your teacher units. It also, gives us CIS, which is classroom instructional supplies. That's our textbook money. It is our teacher money, what they get for their classroom. So professional development, technology. And this year, for the first time since 2008, local schools got common purchases. So that hasn't happened in a long time. Additionally, like we have been saying, 10 meals of ad valorem is required to manage our state foundation program. This is how it works. It's 20 days. It's called 20 days after Labor Day, but the final numbers actually come in the third Friday of October. So it's a little bit longer than 20 days, but that's the old way that it's always referred to. Teacher units, these are the funding divisors for how we get our teacher units. So this slide right here shows you our enrollment over the years. I believe it starts at 2019. So keep in mind that the 2019 ADM was actually from the 2018 year. So it's always gonna be the year behind for your numbers. You can see the ebbs and flows in our ADM numbers over the years. This is what we currently receive, and you can see the differences. So this year, we received a total of 568 units. Teacher units, we decreased by a little over 8 units, and then we actually decreased and lost funding for 1 librarian. There's funding streams, the determination bases elementary and your student population, and your secondary and middle and student population, so you don't earn certain positions until your student population hits a certain number. This is our unit breakout that we receive. Once again, I'll have this put up on the website. That's not currently out there, but this is what we currently receive. This is what we earn for teacher units, principals, assistant principals, counselors, and librarians. So you can see the breakout by school. Now, this slide is a recommendation from the state that discusses how you should do those teacher units. It's a recommendation. It's a good guide. It's not always practical, depending on your school size, that you can lay out this way. But this recommends your regular education teachers, your special ed teachers, and for those schools that would contribute to career tech, those units there. Now, with that said, every secondary school that we have in our district contributes units to the career tech, ACTC, because ACTC does not earn units. Those must come from each secondary high school program. So every high school contributes units to handle our career tech school. You can see that this is how our foundation money is laid out. We received, classroom teachers got $900 for their classroom. It was gonna be 1,000 legislatures taught, and common purchase came up. That's a big deal, because what it did is it removed $100 from that, so that the schools could utilize it for common purchases. And it's the stuff that we take for granted. It's the copiers, it's the laminators, it's the supplies to handle all that. It's the stuff that we take for granted, that those local schools were having to find ways to pay for. So we're so grateful that this common purchase came back, because what this allows to do is for schools to have that money now to help take the burden off of their general fund. For our state ETF program, we got $55 million. For our school nurse program, this pays for, the attempt is to pay for 1 nurse in every school. We received $1 million. Technology coordinator, that's $68,000. We get a percent for that salary. Our transportation operation allocation, we got $5.8 million. Our fleet renewal, the amount per bus fleet did not change. So we got $41,000 for that. No, $841,000. Sorry, my contacts just blurred on me. $841,000. Our capital purchase, which we talked about earlier, that is our public school funds that we can use for construction or debt. We received $2.6 million. Our at-risk grant that we get, $226,000. that allows us to have a behavioral coach, and work with students in that way. Career Tech gets state O&M money, as well as their federal, but this is the required state O&M that they receive. So our total state funds in the foundation program is $66 million. Our match for the state foundation program is $10 million, and our capital purchase match is $439,000. So all in all, we have about $10.5 million of taxes. However, we have the taxes, either sales tax or ad val, whatever I have enough of, $10.5 million has to go to meet those state requirements. So, in my world, we have a lot of different funds that have little special names, and it gets a little confusing if you're not in my world. So we have the general fund. That general fund has your state and your local funds in that. Special revenue, this is your federal revenue programs, that includes your CMP, but it also includes your local school public money. The capital purchase projects fund, once again, that's for acquisition or construction of major projects. We have debt service, and then we have the fiduciary funds. That is the non-public local school area. So our proposed revenues for this next fiscal year, general fund at $87.8 million, special revenue at 17, debt service at 2.9, capital projects at 1.6, and the fiduciary at 496,000. So our total revenues are at 109 for next fiscal year. Our proposed expenditures, general fund 97, special revenue 16 million, debt service 2.7 million, capital projects 1 million, and fiduciary 484,000. So our total proposed expenditures are 117 million. So we're gonna go over what all that makes up and how that looks. So, the general operations of the local school district, using the state funds, property taxes, and local is what's in this account. School personnel, all your personnel, that's gonna be in general fund unless it's paid specifically by a federal grant. Your classroom instructional supplies is in this. So here's the breakdown of our revenues, state, federal, local. So to get a clearer picture of our general fund revenue, 75% comes directly from the state. 24% comes from local, and then the other is very minuscule, it doesn't probably show up. So, and here's the detail of what makes up each one of those categories. In local revenues, property taxes, our estimated budget's 10.2 million, our sales and use estimated budget 10.4. Keep in mind that of that amount budgeted, 10 million has to go toward matching the state foundation program. So half of that's already obligated from the get-go. Then we have our miscellaneous, our field trips, and then any other kind of miscellaneous things that we might receive throughout the year. So in our expenditure areas, we have to classify based on instruction, operations, auxiliary, etc. So we classify our expenditures so that we can collect data to show where our money is being spent on. So as you'll see here in the general fund, our instructional is 68 million, operations, which involves your maintenance area, 9.7, auxiliary 6.4, that's your transportation area, general admin 4 million, capital 3.5, and other expenditures. So there's the breakdown of our function categories of where our expenditures are being used. So as you can see in this gives you a very clear view, 71% goes to instruction. So we're putting the money exactly where it's meant and how it's supposed to be utilized. This gives a comparison of salaries and benefits from prior year to this year. Please keep in mind we did have a 2% cost of living that was given by the legislature, so that's gonna contribute to the increase of this. But here's what's important. This is my take on it. Our budget of is 87 million in general fund for revenues. Salaries and benefits is 75 million. So our revenues that we get in is going to pay our employees. We don't have the extra It's going right to our staff. So our proposed budget for general fund, 87 million for revenues, 97 million for expenditures. So that obviously leaves us with a deficit of 9.3. But let's just say this much. Keep in mind, all year long, for the last couple of months, I've mentioned, we've been getting the supplemental allocations. We've been getting supplemental allocations. We received $9.5 million of supplemental allocations between July and August. We received the revenue. The expenses won't take place until 2025. So, we received 9.5. If I'm showing that I've got this expense down for 9.3, we're really gonna have revenues exceed expenditures only by 200,000. It's better than negative 9.3, but we're only going to have revenues, over expenditures based on current budgeting forecasting at 200,000. So we will end, without doing any amendments, we would end at 40 million in our, fund balance because of the, supplements and having to utilize them. Everything has a time frame. Everything must be spent by September 30th of the following year. So everything has to be gone whenever you have the state money, it's tied to that fiscal year. Any questions about general fund? All right. Special revenues, as we mentioned earlier, that's your Title I, Title II, Title IV, C&P, and local schools public. So here's the breakout of that. Obviously, the majority of it's gonna be federal, with 10 million of that allocated. So the breakdown is we received Title I, Title II, Title IV. We have a Stronger Connections grant, which is a social emotional support grant. Perkins, that is for career tech. IDA Part B and IDA preschool, those are our special ed federal grants. And then we have CMP and other. If you'll notice, our IDA, our special ed grants decreased this year. We asked, because our SPED population is greatly increasing. And we don't have enough funding to support our special ed population, and we end up having to get a lot more instructional aides to have to assist with some of our students based upon their needs, and we're not funded for that. So that's where earlier, when I mentioned the other current expenses, we're having to shuffle and utilize that to help support these classrooms. So when we inquired about why our numbers went down because when they review for this funding, they look at your ADM, and then they look to see if you were participating in the CEP program. The CEP program is what we've been doing all year with the Everyone Is Free. It's the Community Eligibility Program. And by going and using that program, it changed some of our numbers, and so therefore it decreased our funding for SPED. It's one of those things that we didn't know till we know. We'd already talked about earlier when we went to this format, we didn't know what the effects on the federal side of things were gonna be. That was one of the effects of that. So with the special revenues, we've got these allocated once again, instructional, operational, as for each category, just like the general fund. We're doing 75% of our federal funds based on instruction, as we should. That's what it's there for. That Title I is there to help support those socioeconomic level schools that need that extra academic help or assistance. Title II is there to support in two ways: classroom size reduction or professional development for our staff at the level schools that are certified. So we are utilizing this in the manner in which it's meant to be. So our special revenue fund, revenues at 17 million, expenditures at 16 million. Based upon this, we should see an increase in fund balance by the end of the year at 3.9. Now, please keep in mind that CMP is classified as federal revenue. We are required, if needed, to send pass-through money to CMP. If that looks like that they're not generating enough revenue to support themselves, we have to send money. It will still be classified as federal. It will not show local because the rules that we have to follow is part of that CMP program, and so it will all be underneath the federal classification. Right now, we have, it looks that we will budget a $2.3 million pass-through. Ms. Seegers and I will evaluate that as we did this year. We evaluate to see how much of that is truly gonna be needed, but in case I have to budget it all. So that's 2.3 million coming from general fund over to, the federal special revenue side, and that has to come out of our local funds. That's not, I don't have state funds for that, that's local money that has to be utilized for that. Any questions on special revenue? Debt service, obviously, it's related to any construction or equipment, or vehicles that we purchase. Our state funds, that we receive, we utilize to pay that for our bond debt. This year we're getting 2.6 million, and I break that out among the different bond debt that we have. We have multiple, bonds out there. Our fleet renewal money that we receive to buy buses, or we can pay on bus debt. We have 2 bonds out there that, we're still paying bus debt on, and so that money gets utilized for that. So here are some of the bonds that we have. We have a 2008, it's an old state bond. The state took the bond out, our school system decided to participate in it, and we still have to pay that back each year. Same for the 2010 QSCAD, it was a state bond, we elected to participate in, so the state's in the state's name, but we participate, so we have to pay it back. We have the 2015, bond, which that's what y'all, in the resolution passed earlier tonight, if we're gonna use some of that K-12 grant money to reduce that bond debt. We have a 2018 bond that was for roof repairs and bus purchases, and we have a 2021 bond for the kindergarten school and, bus purchases. So, for the 2015 bond that we are gonna get ready to reduce this year, the principal on that's $415. So the 2.5 million that we got out of the K-12 grant will not be enough sufficiently, plus we are required to match. So some of that will be utilized to match to defease that bond debt. So here's how the bond principals payments look. Not everything has principal. In fact, the bond principal for 2018 doesn't kick in until 2028, because how the bonds are staggered, the principals for each bond don't pick up until that one bond is finished. So when 2015 principal is paid for, then the 2018 principal picks up, and when 2018 is done, then the 2021 principal will pick up. So on the 18 and 21, all we're doing is paying interest. On the fleet renewal, we've got the 2018 and 2021, principal and interest. We do start paying principal on that side of the bond early, because that's a 10-year payment. Okay, so we discussed that we are going to, defease debt for the 2015, date of liquidation is 2028, so that's outstanding. That gives us a couple of years as a school board that I'm not having to pay for that principal and interest. And this goes into an account that hopefully builds up some interest that will help finish paying it off in 2028. So that's an awesome opportunity that we had with the support of our legislators, to get the, K-12 grant. The 2017 bond, that was a bond note with Regions Bank. It was a payables, it was not a bond. It was a lease to purchase for buses, we paid that off this year. Transportation has, different costs when you have to pay for, field trips and stuff, so they had built up. And so we were glad to be able to pay that and get that off the books, so we weren't having to utilize so much of our fleet renewal money. What that will allow me to do is tuck some fleet renewal money to help with purchases of new buses. The 2018 bond, we have a remaining, 4.7 million. Date of liquidation on that is 2032, and the 2021 bond, we have 28 million, and the date of liquidation on that is 2051. So, with our revenues and expenditures, revenues at 2.9, expenditures at 2.7, the unreserved fund balance for the end of the year estimated is at 4.9. Any questions about the debt? Garden School. We'll see that, we won't see final payments go out until the 2025 fiscal year, because we'll have to wait for everything to be signed off and completed. We will have to do some pass-through money on that, but we look at doing some, our fund balance being at 5.7 at the end of the year for that. The non-public school activities, we've got revenues at 496 and expenses at 484. This is some of your off-the-book, not on your campus, like sometimes your PTOs. That's some of those that are going through that. This also includes the Elizabeth Steer Scholarship that we hold. It is a scholarship for, some seniors. There's a whole committee that decides that. We have a trust for that, and so that's part of that, a dollar amount as well. So with our local revenues between the ad valorem and the sales tax, I have, estimated 21 million budgeted. So the allocation of that 21 million, 10 million of it's obligated for our match for foundation program. 439,000 is obligated for our capital funds match. 2.3 is obligated for our CNP pass-through, and anything else that our state funding that won't cover bond debt has to be allocated. So you can see out of the 21 million, over half of that is obligated, required to be utilized in some fashion. So what types of local revenues do we have? We talked about sales tax, we talked about ad valorem. So this bucket of sales tax right here, we utilize it for our CNP pass-through, our new virtual school to help support it. Our pre-K teachers that we don't get enough funding, about 20%, we're a little short, about 20% for the pre-K program, so that comes out of that. If we don't get enough money for our ARI teachers, this year they did go up, we're getting 85,000 instead of 80, but that doesn't always cover salaries and benefits. Then on our 1 cent sales tax, that's where central office staff is now. In the past, central office has been coming out of the OCE money, and upon my review, that shouldn't be. So we shifted it to local revenue. And so what that does is it frees up the funding if I need additional aides. It pulls CO staff out. So if I need to get more aides in the school, and it has the local revenue to support the CO staff. So this year we moved all central office staff there. This also covers all athletic supplements and any materials and supplies needed for that, maintenance vehicles. It also has to cover our maintenance effort that we're required to support special ed. Then we also have our half cent that we use for utilities, our SSUT, and our 1 cent from the city. Now, the SSUT comes from the county commission, it's countywide. The 1 cent that we receive from the city is designated for city limit schools. So we always, from a board, from a CO, we send money out to the local schools. So what we did this year is if you're in the city limits, all your local school funding that we send from a central office standpoint is coming out of the city sales tax. And if you're out of the city limit area, it's coming from the SSUT. And then our ad valorem, obviously, we know what that is, and that is going toward our match. So when we look at budgeting and we look at what's coming up, we've got to look at the challenges that we've got. Our student enrollment decrease. We won't know what next year's funding, 26 funding, looks like until we get our head count. Federal funding is heavily utilized at Etoggaville and Billingsley because as they're both K-12 schools, they're both low enrollment and they don't earn enough teacher units. So each school has to utilize their portion of Title I to get the appropriate needed teacher units. This year, Etoggaville has 6 units coming from their Title I, Billingsley has 7. We have, our federal revenues are decreasing due to ADM. Our current funding is not adequate to cover all of our programs. It doesn't cover our ARI teachers. It doesn't cover our pre-K. It doesn't cover enough for us to just do basic maintenance and keep up with anything. We have to utilize teacher units for those schools that don't earn an assistant principal. The Taulville does not earn an assistant principal at all because they are less than 250 students. Some of our other schools earn half of an assistant principal or half of a counselor. So we have to utilize the teaching units to offset and help with that. There's a great increase in our special ed population. There's requirements that we need to do to help meet the needs of those students. But then we have to figure out where it's coming from because our current funding is not sufficient to support it. Then we have to figure out how we're gonna maintain our programs down to the CARES money, the ESSER money's gone away. We're gonna be covered for just a little bit because we strategically work together as a group, directors, the super, and trying to utilize this ESSER money so that we can spread it over 2 years to give us a cushion. So we've got this covered for right now, but basic things that we are required by the state, such as the curriculum related to the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act. That instructional software is $1 million. So we've got to start figuring out how are we getting that, how are we gonna fund that in the future? So those are the things that we have to look at coming down the road. Technology, you know, when COVID hit, Chromebooks, laptops, every student, well, now we have to figure out how we're gonna keep that up. That's all local. We don't get the grants for that. The required training that we are required for our teachers to attend, professional development related to the Literacy Act, the Numeracy Act. Anything else that we have that's required, we have to find the funding to pay for them to go to this training. We have a very small support staff in technology and maintenance. For this system this large, we're understaffed in both departments. We've talked about the CEP program, and that it affects our funding streams. We've talked about the assistant principals not always being an earned unit, nor are we fully funded. And here's a misnomer about that. Your principals, your counselors, your librarians, and your assistant principals, you're not 100% funded for them. There's a formula down at that is used when they pull in the information. So you're not 100% funded. You're funded on a formula basis for that. The Second Chance program, our alternative school, is either funded local units or it's through that at-risk grant. Or we have to utilize units from another school. The first year of our virtual school is not covered by the state, so we're having to locally fund it. Local revenues now are absorbing central office salaries and benefits. So that also makes a change and a difference. So, not to be so grim, but ultimately, here's what we have to do going forward. We have to tighten the purse strings. We have to make sure that we're serving our students, but we're gonna have to be mindful and frugal in serving them if we don't have an additional revenue stream come through. The demands that are placed on the schools now with the curriculum changes, the learning, the safety and security, and we're not getting a safety grant this year. For the first time in a couple of years, we're not getting a safety grant. So any updates to cameras, intercoms, we have to figure out a funding source for that. That's all local now. So things that we take for granted that you think we've got buckets for, we don't. I said that I predict that if nothing changes, we'll only bring in 200,000. We won't bring that in if the HVAC unit crashes and burns. So we'll then start having to dip into our reserves if we don't have another opportunity to figure out some additional revenues to bring in to help with the budget. We, as a school district, are not frivolous. As you saw earlier, 75 million, salaries and benefits, instructional, the majority of it. So, we're not frivolous, but we're not able to move forward either. We're in a holding pattern. And so we're gonna need to be able to look at how we're gonna have to adjust down the road if it doesn't change. We'll be okay for this fiscal year. But in the next couple of years, I don't know. But for this fiscal year, we'll be okay. I went over that really quickly. I know it's some kind of boring information, but it's needed information that we all need to hear. Do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I saw in state news that many school systems are giving back their ESSER funds because they were uncommitted or unspent. Are we giving back any of our ESSER funds?
We're not giving back anything. In fact, I think about 27,000 left, and that's September payroll. Everything else is gone. So, we are not returning money. That's my big no-no. We don't return money to the state. We're gonna use every bit of it. So we don't return. I mean, we used every bit of our ESSER.
And then my other question was on foundation program. If a student is special needs and we know it's more expensive, do you get more funding for that student?
No, ma'am.
Or is it at the same level as the general?
Good question. Student funding, same level. It doesn't matter if it's a gen ed student or a special ed, it's the same funding stream, same per pupil.
And have our special ed numbers increased?
Yes, ma'am. They are every year. All right, well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your time and attention, and, I have some forms, on the table back there. If anyone in the public has questions or whatever, you can jot that down. I'll be glad to get back with you on this, and then we'll have our final budget presentation, for the board to approve, Thursday. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bogue. Appreciate all the hard work you and your department are doing. Very detailed analysis, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, board members, last thing on this part of the agenda, superintendent report. Just have two quick things. I do want to point out, on a positive note, as you know, we're trying to tie in as much as we can with using our funds for local businesses and entities. And one of the highlights, the great work with our child nutrition program, we recently purchased many truckloads of peas and watermelons from the Hill Family Farms in Billingsley. District's partnership with our local farmers, again, is just another way that CNP and you guys as board members are trying to help our local community, but also give our kids the best that they can have. So, had a lot of great comments about the food. We'll continue that partnership. I guess if that was the positive thing, I'll go ahead and address the negative for today. As you know, we had there was several schools in our area, that and us included, that had some threats online. I did do a call out a few minutes ago, or right before the board meeting, but basically there were several threats to schools around the Tri-County area. I want to make sure everybody understands that every threat that gets posted, we investigate every single one of them. The timeline of how all that occurred, I went to bed last night. I should have went to bed a little earlier, got a little more sleep, but basically after midnight, we were made aware that the threats at that point then included Prattville High School. We worked in conjunction with our law enforcement agencies all through the night. Huge shout out to Mr. Premier and Mr. Barrington, working with those guys as well. When we got to the point this morning, at 6:25, in cooperation with our local agencies, we determined that everything's fine. We felt good that it was a hoax, so to speak, so we made that announcement. There were some issues that we're gonna clean up, and all issues start and end with me. First, we had a delay in letting parents and employees know the absence would be excused. What occurred there, not making excuses, but again, I said all this in a call a minute ago. With the state, you have to get approval to use certain coding opportunities. And to the state's credit, you know, we were calling our contact at the State Department well before they are legally on the clock. So they worked with us, but getting the answer that we needed on the coding side. I think it came out about 720, 725. We immediately put out with that as much as we could. Moving forward, heaven forbid if we have this situation again, at least now we know the answer from the state, we can get information out a little quicker to our peers. So there was some frustration from parents on that. Hey, if I'd known it was gonna be excused, I wouldn't have sent my kids to school today. Then that led to a backup of checkouts once we sent that out. On the checkout side, as you know, we've overhauled our registration process. There was an issue with some data in there. That starts and ends with me. I'll figure out a backup solution that when we have these issues, we're going to have a principals meeting tomorrow. We're going to go back to some old school paper stuff on campuses for these types of events. And I know that sounds common sense. We should do it. I've been trying to get our principals and everybody, hey, let's move digital, let's move digital, let's move digital. And then you have a situation like today where there's 400 parents at Prattville High School trying to check out and just it overloaded what we were trying to do. So lesson learned. I know I do apologize for our parents and our community. There was a lot of long lines there, but again, it starts and ends with me, and we'll figure it out. Then the other thing that I said in the call out was just make sure everybody understands how we handle metal detectors. As you know, we purchased metal detectors last year. We do use them. Schools use them randomly throughout the day, or excuse me, throughout the year. Sure, it looks different in secondary schools than it does in elementary schools. It just does. But today, well, let me back up. A couple weeks ago, Dr. Ferris and I, and especially the last few days, started trying to dial in the settings. The company has been adamant all along. There's no metal detector where you can go through with a book bag and find out everything's in the book bag. Well, Dr. Ferris, again, huge shout out to him and his staff, Prattville PD. We've been trying to find this magic setting for several weeks now, and we thought we had it. We thought we had it. So as an extra layer of protection today, I told Dr. Ferris at Prattville High School, go ahead and run all the metal detectors. Let's get some real world data. What does this look like? It was very slow. We had about 1,000 students that went through because a lot of parents left, and it took well over an hour. So the real world implications of what we're trying to do, we're not there yet. The settings on those metal detectors, to use them every single day is going to require an enormous amount of staff, and then quite frankly, Prattville High School is running 1,900 kids from 7:15 to 7:45. And again, today we ran a little more than half. It took almost an hour and a half. And they did well. It was a well-oiled machine, but again, it's just a sheer number. So what I said in the call out was, look, we're going to continue what we're doing with our random stuff. Is it perfect? No. Are we going to continue to do experiments throughout the county on these machines? Can we dial them in? Yes. The company and all the other companies are adamant that there's no way to do it and to get it to where it's just hitting on the objects that you want it to hit on. We're going to keep on looking. We're doing all we can with this scenario. Safety is always at the forefront of what we're trying to do. That's not lip service. That's legit. And I got to commend all the schools and Prattville PD and Sheriff's Department. Great job all the way around. And then I did mention the data, correct? The data issue. So look, I do hate that some of this happened today. I hate that our schools were in the position. I hate I put them in the position. Looking back on it, I probably would have not ran the metal detectors today at Prattville High School because it caused other issues. But part of things when they occur, especially when like today, we felt really, really sure that this was a hoax. Today was a great way to run through that and get the real world data. Is this working? Is it not? How do we do it? How can we not? So today was good for us on that. I appreciate our parents being so patient with us. Today's been a long day. CO staff did a great job helping schools. Everybody worked together. So it's not perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect. We're going to continue working on it. And again, it starts and ends with me, so we'll figure it out. So that's really the only two things I want to talk about. Do you have any questions on anything or any issues?
I will say what Mr. Wolf was talking about on the book bags is like reading binders, anything metal, it hits, and I know for me, watching across the state, you'll see different places, either they don't use them or they'll have the kids walk through holding up the book bags, which defeats the whole purpose of having a metal detector with it. And so when he's talking about dialing in, it's getting the sensitivity down to where it wouldn't hit on binders, but it would hit on a gun or something on that thicker metal. And it's trying to get those settings right, because once it hits, then you're having to pull that kid and you're having to wind them, which is taking other personnel. And again, it's slowing down when you think of a school the size of Prattville High School of when you're trying to get your flow going in the mornings to get them funneled into the school, into their staging areas at that point in time.
Well, that's all I have.
There being no further business, may I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
A second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right.